Okay. So, hello everybody. Kicking off the rest of the afternoon here. Welcome to our second plenary session of the day, Climbing the Zero Waste Ladder. We have 4 panelists who will explore and contrast perspectives and approaches across the zero waste hierarchy. From the value proposition of the reuse economy to the pandemic hygiene waste boom, edible food recovery, and behavior change science, we hope to offer a toolbox of strategies to problem solve particular zero waste challenges. And this is an hour-long session, so we will have our 4 presenters and then a brief Q&A period at the end. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and some will be answered there. So keep an eye on it, and we'll do the best we can to address others during the verbal Q&A period, which could get shortened because there's a lot to cover. So I'm Krista Tornay. I'm a Bay Area-based zero waste consultant and educator working with Zero Waste USA, who, as you know, is one of the main coordinators of this amazing conference. I also chair the City of Berkeley Zero Waste Commission, which was established 50 years ago. So we're proud of that. We're still here. So now to introduce our panelists, and please know that you can learn more about them in the speaker profiles on the conference website. It also has their the LinkedIn contact information there. So to start us off, I'd like to introduce Heather Trim, who uses the pronouns she and her, and is the Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington, and also her colleague, Skenia Dolovova, who uses the pronouns she, her, and is Zero Waste Washington's Waste Reduction Programs Manager. Zero Waste Washington's mission is to drive policy change for a healthy and waste-free world. Our next speaker is Jessica Higas. She's a PhD candidate at the University of California, Berkeley, where she researches sustainable and just transitions to waste-free systems. This research has included examining the amount and type of plastic waste California exports, assessing what happened to the US plastics recycling system after Operation National Sword in China, and conducting a systems analysis of the solid waste infrastructure and services in the Navajo Nation, and also creating a waste audit tool for school meal programs. Jessica also helped make Chow Hall at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business the first certified true zero waste academic in the US. Excuse me. Next, we have Grace Liao, who was with the Berkeley Food Network, where she implemented edible food recovery as a core part of the Food Hub's food sourcing strategy. Working with food businesses across the food system, the program has rescued 2 million pounds of food and counting from the waste stream. Now she is a senior associate at Food Works Group, where her operational experience informs systems level progress across the food system. And finally, Maggie Clark will sum it all up and present on her New York project. So she's a zero waste consultant at Maggie Clark Environmental, has been an educator and researcher in environmental science and advocate for zero waste practices for over 30 years. She's chair of the National Recycling Coalition's Committee to Advance the NRC Clearinghouse Library, and was the long-term chair of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board's Waste Prevention and Reuse Committee, having developed a grant program to advance reuse and repair in New York City, which has given grants to over 50 groups in 3 years. Maggie holds a PhD in her doctoral research tested environmental shopping campaigns in Manhattan, and subsequent research in New York City neighborhoods focused on reasons for participating in recycling. So with those introductions, I welcome all of you and thank you for your participation. And Heather, do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Yes, and let me know when it starts to look correct here. So I'm trying to get the slideshow to start from the beginning. Okay, here we go. Okay, is that looking good?
Looks good.
Great. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. And what a treat to come after Peter. He is such an amazing speaker and is just so inspiring about this sector. I am presenting today with my colleague, Xenia Dolovova, and so we'll be tag teaming. And so if you haven't heard of us, Zero Waste Washington is a statewide nonprofit. We're based out of Seattle, but we're statewide. And we are working to make trash obsolete. And we primarily do this by helping get laws passed at the state and local level, but we also do research and pilot projects. And we are working very much on a right to repair bill in Washington. Just had a big old meeting on it yesterday. So that is definitely a big part of our agenda. We have 7 focus areas. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail here, but you can see our general areas of focus. And I'm going to turn it right on over to Xenia to continue the presentation.
Thank you so much, Heather. So Zero Waste Washington is in fact very fortunate to attract resources to support what we call the repair economy in Washington. And this effort brings together multiple, many nonprofit and for-profit and governmental partners, and all in pursuit of creating community resources and infrastructure for reuse and repair. And today I'm gonna take you through just a very few of those efforts, parts of this effort. Next, please. Yeah, and so the first one is a online platform that we call repaireconomywashington.org. It summarizes very different resources, and among them is this interactive map. We manually consolidated and researched over 1,000 repair businesses in Washington state and mapped them so that everyone who visits the website can conveniently research exactly what they need. Next, please. And to attract more people to the platform and encourage repair and support to those repair businesses, we conducted a social marketing campaign. It's different from social media. Social marketing is a comprehensive exercise where we learned motivators and barriers for people's behavior or why they don't behave the way we want them, which is repair. And that helped us develop various messaging. Then we tested some ads to see what works best. And this ad, for example, encourages people to support local jobs and local repair businesses. Next. These, for example, extends life of the product, this message. Next, please. That just communicates to that environmental consciousness of people. And next. This is just having a very clear call to action for people to not trash. And on the next slide, you can see the results that social media performed. And we found that the local jobs is actually the most attractive message for people and encouraging them to go to the map and find that repair shop near them. Next, please. Other two efforts that you see here on the screen is Fix-It Fairs and Repair Economy Summit. On Fix-It Fairs, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with community repair events, and we just had Peter Mui talking about them. So we are also encouraging and facilitating and managing repair events, Fix-It Fairs in Washington state, facilitating Skillshare and repair. And on repair economy meetups, we are also creating a platform for our partners like tool libraries and makerspaces and other entities that run repair events and Fix-It Fairs, for all of them to come together to share knowledge, to share experience, to build on each other's experiences. And the next meetup is coming up next week. So if you're interested, it's a call to action. Next, please. Next effort is building on a big issue with furniture waste. This particular photo, Heather and I took at the transfer station just this year. And you see a dresser there, a chair and a sofa, and all of them are going straight to the landfill. Though we could do something with it. Next, please. So we call our pilot that we are actively developing Furniture Fix-It. And what we do, next please. First, we collect furniture from public and partners. This particular photo was taken at the collection event that happened at the transfer station. So we literally saved many furniture pieces that were heading to the landfill. Next, please. Then with help of fixers and volunteers, we repair those items. In this particular case, we also repurposed some of the old futon to kind of repair the antique bed. Next. This is the reupholstered chair. Next. The nightstand that have a new life, and the dresser. Next. And then all the effort that we do is benefiting vulnerable. So we work with major refugee resettlement agencies in Washington state and serving their clients. For example, this is a Ukrainian family that got all the furniture pieces that you see on this photo. And on the next slide is a Afghan family that received from this program multiple furniture pieces and also this table and chairs that they requested that will help them assimilate in the US better. Thank you so much for attention. Back to Heather.
Great. It is just such a wonderful project. So we are also in the midst of doing a big research project, and we're basing our research project on really cool groundwork that has been done by Reuse Minnesota. And they have done now 3 reports. They're just finishing up their 3rd report. So we've been very collaboratively working with them to do a similar research impact report for Washington State, looking at the repair economy. So we are looking at the repair, the resale, and the rental, that's all reuse, of consumer products. And we're using the definition that they developed in Minnesota, which is the continued use, repair, or repurposing of items or materials which extend the life of resources and decreases the demand for new production. And we're looking at social, economic, and environmental impacts in Washington. And so here's an example on this slide of some of the repair businesses that we've been compiling. And my screen is getting blocked here, so I can't see it. Oh, shoot. Repair businesses, rental, and reuse. And you can see, for example, under repair, it's tailoring and shoe repair and appliance repair. These are businesses that is their main function. And then we have in the middle thrift and estate sale, and then on the right things like rental, including goats. So here is our preliminary results, and this is the number of businesses we have in each of these different sectors. You can see repair, rental, and resellers are in fact the largest ones that we've largest categories we found of our 15,000 plus businesses in Washington. But we're also matching up with Minnesota. So we're looking at, for example, used cars, books, because books have a component, bookstores, for example, have a component of resale. So my screen is very difficult to use here. What we're doing is we're basically looking at the displacement of if you were to buy an item new. And so we're going to be weighting the businesses. So for example, a repair business will get 100% of weighting, but if it's a business that does other things, it will be a partial weighting, like maybe down to 5%. We're on the left, we're calculating the economic and job value to Washington. On the right, we are mapping this to a model, the US EEIO model, to look at greenhouse gas emissions and water use avoidance. And I want to give big props out to Wes, who's in the bottom right hand. He's from EPA. He is an amazing guy who is the brains behind this US EEIO model, and he is which has been used for other things, not so much for reuse, and he is very interested in having this become more usable for reuse. So I want to just give you a little walkthrough of a recent experience. Went to Home Depot for another purpose, and you know how it is a sea of signs. Well, take a look there. There was a sign that said rental, and holy cow, at Home Depot now, they have a huge room with a lot of things that people can rent. And I asked the guy behind the counter, he said, oh yeah, people are using it a ton. And on the wall behind him, it turns out, whoa, they also do repair. And so it was just this Xerox thing up on the wall of all the things that they do repair for. And then when I came out of the room, oh my God, they also are doing used sales. So you can see that mainstream big box companies are now getting into our zero waste reuse mode of life. And in fact, just heard yesterday that Eddie Bauer is now doing rentals. So this is like really fabulous when this stuff starts to become mainstream. So really quickly, because I know we're out of time here almost, is that we have done also a look at the social impact of these businesses and did surveys and found, and of course I cannot see my screen here because of the way it's set up, found impact that many of the businesses are micro businesses, many are one-off shops, and many of them provide more than one type of service. And if you look at the bottom, the workforce impacts that 31% of the ones we surveyed were minority and women-owned, and 20% employ veterans and people who are historically underserved. And then we also looked at workforce development, community building, and synergies with other entities. And I'm going quickly because you're going to be able to see this report in January or February. So you're going to be able to read all these data later. But what's interesting is also in surveying the owners of these businesses, what are the motivators why people are coming to their businesses? 52% said to extend the life of their item, and 48% said to support a local business. This matched up with the ads that Xenia showed you earlier. And then on the right, you can see the challenges these businesses are dealing with are very similar to the challenges across the board. So these are no surprise. COVID, lack of technically skilled workers, rent, or building costs and cost of labor. But in particular, we have heard from work we did with the survey and before that there is an issue of needing to train a new skilled workforce who can do repair, reuse, and rental. And they're feeling that, these business owners. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to the Q&A.
Wonderful. And thank you for being so on time and about that, Heather. Thank you. Wonderful work. Thank you for presenting it. Jessica, you're up if you want to go ahead and share. Heather, you may need to unshare. There we go. Jessica, you may be muted. I think you're still muted. If you say something, I'll know you're there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, and I will give you a 2-minute warning too.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, National Zero Waste Conference, for having me. And thank you, Heather and Xenia, for your updates are fascinating and exciting. And hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Higas, she, her. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am a member of the UAW 2865 as a graduate student researcher at UC Berkeley. This is notable because there are 48,000 of us across the state who are currently striking against the UC due to unfair labor practices. As a way to be in solidarity with my fellow union members, in this presentation, I will discuss research material conducted outside of that specific capacity. However, if any questions arise that pertain to research done on behalf of UC Berkeley, I will not be able to comment. So just want to make note of that before I get into things. Now, let's begin. All right, so for my presentation today, it is on the making of the anti-single-use disposable, or anti-SUD, foodware norm. Foodware as in bags, straws, cups, stirrers, napkins, all of that. In this photo, so previously in this photo, you'll see that this is conference of the UN Environmental Assembly in Nairobi in March. That is where they passed a resolution to begin negotiations for a global plastic treaty, a global agreement to examine and then reduce plastic and pollution generation across the plastic life cycle. So this sculpture was there to embody the urgent call to turn off the plastic production tap. And today we're going to geek out on that kind of policy. So we're going to contextualize that, however, in this concept of norms. First, I'll explain the esoteric concept of norms, which, spoiler alert, infiltrate so much of what we do, whether we realize it or not. Then we'll go into the components of a norm, which are movement, policy, and the end product, the norm itself. And we'll do this all specifically within the anti-SUD foodware space.
Hey, Jessica.
And then, of course, coming
Jessica, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Could you make your screen? We got a little. We can't see it all.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of cut off. Are you able to do full screen?
I think so. Is it bigger now?
It's like your window is very small. I think that's better. I think that is a little bit better for the dimensions.
Could you actually make it full screen by using the full screen method? Right now, you're actually.
How did that?
Better.
Does that work?
Let's go.
Fantastic. Okay. Thanks for calling that out. So we don't have much time. So this is going to be quick with large generalizations. And I appreciate your patience as we bridge this gap from sometimes unapproachable academic research to the important on-the-ground work that you are all doing. So what are norms? What are they? How do they come to be? Norms are those unwritten rules that are commonplace, often taken for granted, but are also resilient. So they shape decisions we make and actions we take. They guide our behaviors. They're resilient in that new technologies, materials, laws, and fundings don't necessarily impact them. So unless a norm is being questioned, like what we're experiencing with the SUD foodware space of massive mobilization, norms are kind of there, omnipresent in our everyday. And like that massive mobilization that we're seeing against SUD's foodware, norms often start as movements. They are then translated into policies, which are then codified into that norm, that kind of take it for grantedness, that omnipresentness. An example of this is with the suffragettes. With the suffragettes in the early 20th century, they fought for women's rights, particularly the right to vote. And that movement then translated into the 19th Amendment. And now in the US, while a woman's right to vote is not necessarily taken for granted, it is not commonly questioned and it is resilient. So for instance, it weathered the pandemic. Now, with the anti-SUD foodware movement, let's dive a little bit deeper into what this movement is. So I'll quickly describe that movement and then the policy to demonstrate how it is an emerging norm. The anti-SUD foodware movement and its various entities all aim at eroding this pre-existing culture and behavior around SUDs. So eroding the single-use disposable as the default and elevating the non-SUD, the anti-SUD, the reusable foodware system. So those are technologies, systems, policies, materials, behaviors, all of those things that all foster reusables, that all foster anti-SUD. This conference, as a means of coalescing people and ideas, is part of that anti-SUD foodware movement. So you are all participating in that movement to break away from SUDs. So for policies in particular, how that movement has translated to enact and proposed policies is that second phase. And that's how we're then kind of continuing along this, making anti-SUD. However, that policy adoption process, historically non-linear, disparate, and codified item by item. So an example of this is plastic bags. The anti-plastic bag policies began in lower income countries, primarily because it is historically harder to collect and process such film. The distance action, improper disposal of a plastic bag, and human harm is shortened in those specific locations. So the harms to human health of improper plastic in higher income countries, because while there's a concern over the rising costs of municipalities for litter cleanup, as well as location-specific research, there was strong industry-induced regulatory chill, as they call it, which is this fear of litigation or the fear of lobbying and opposition and the lack of resources by non-industry groups to counteract.
Jessica?
Another example of the anti-plastic bag space on non-linear and policy adoption within the US is this kind of East Coast to West Coast difference. So first, they evolved in the East Coast through adoption of fees on SUD's plastic and paper bags to curb product consumption. And then in response, the plastic industry lobbied to prevent such fees on the West Coast, specifically in California, through preemption laws. California therefore adopted bans because fees were not a viable legislative mechanism and continued to the statewide preemption law expired. So now I want to take you into, we've discussed that there is an anti-SUD foodware movement, and that is participating in this non-linear, disparate, item-by-item policy adoption process. Now I want to have us dive more deeply into those specific policies through that policy mix framework to demonstrate that the anti-SUD through this proliferation of policy.
Jessica, it's Chris. I'm going to just ask, you might want to turn your camera off because you're cutting in and out, and maybe, I know you're not in the country, so maybe there's a bit of a bandwidth issue.
Yeah.
That might help, okay?
Definitely. Gosh, I'm sorry for all these issues, everyone. I hope this gets better. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. It's you're out of the country, and we're depending on technology. So just keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, appreciate this, everyone. All right, so here's this policy mix. It's a pretty intense chart that I want to take you through, but still high level. You'll see that there are different ways to categorize policies and one way to do so is by how comprehensive the policy space is for a given topic. And this is important because in theory, the more types of policies for a given topic, the more codified the topic becomes. So the more that topic becomes a norm and is thus in everyday life, take it for granted. So essentially, the more policies mean the more omnipresent, the more taken for granted, the more resilient anything becomes. The two main policy categories are creative and destructive. We unfortunately don't have the time to go deeply into any, but high level creative means that it's fostering new systems like innovation, business models, materials, all of those things that go to counter the pre-existing norm. And the destructive policies aim to erode that pre-existing norm. So creative are all of those systems and innovations in place to counter SUDS foodware, and all of the destructive are to erode SUD foodware. There are 7 creative policy types for destructive, and in the middle are examples of those policies within the anti-SUD foodware space within the US. The column on the right rates the relative prevalence of that policy type compared to the other policy types. So this is jargony and this is intense. The too long didn't read or the it's lunchtime, I don't really care all that much, I'm kind of zoning out, absolutely get that. The takeaway is that policies with high prevalence means the US has a decent number of such policies in place. Those with low or NA prevalence, non-applicable prevalence, means that the US has little or none of those policies in place. In theory, if we want the anti-SUD foodware movement to turn into a norm, we need high prevalence across all policy types. However, and those are the ones that are showing the low ones across the US. However, the plot thickens because it's not just the number of policies in place, it is also the effectiveness of those policies that are in place. So not all policies have this equal effectiveness. Here, effectiveness is defined as reducing the reliance and prevalence on SUDS foodware.
Jessica, it's 2-minute warning.
Thank you. So to put that kind of overwhelming chart back up again, you'll see that we have quantified the effectiveness on the right, and this quantification was garnered from available studies. And as with any research that brings in myriad data sources together, generalizations and sometimes oversimplification happens. However, there's still much to be gained from this to show that there are some policies that are highly effective in this space and some that have medium effectiveness. And so these are the areas in which we should be putting our energy to foster more policies of these types. So to bring it all together, if we want to codify the anti-SUD foodware movement into a norm, we need more policies. Specifically, we need those policies to have currently have low or no prevalence, as shown in the first table, or have high or potential for high effectiveness, as shown in the second table. So thank you. We made it through. Deeply appreciate working through all of the tech issues and going through a lot of this kind of jargony space. Appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you, Jessica. Jessica is out of the country, so thank you for being able to do this from Mexico. And let's see, Grace, you want to get ready? Jessica and I have also worked on policies in Berkeley, which has been really wonderful to further the anti-SUD movement here. Grace, you want to share your screen?
I'm getting a pop-up that I can't share content unless I'm a co-host, but I do think I'm a co-host.
You are a co-host. If you have a problem, we could have, on our side, we could share your slides for you.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that might be the quickest resolution.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
Give me a second.
That's great, because, yeah, Rose can share your slides, and you can just say next slide. And,
Oh, wait, it looks like it's working now.
okay, great.
Okay,
Go ahead.
great. Great. Can you all see that? Awesome. My name's Grace, and I'm based in Berkeley, California. And today I'm going to be talking about the food waste and food recovery landscape in Alameda County. So for folks who aren't familiar with the geography, that spans from Berkeley all the way south to Fremont, and about 1.6 million residents reside in Alameda County. So first, I want to take a look at the problem of food waste and what that looks like in Alameda County. So I know a lot of us are familiar with the nationwide statistics. 30 to 40% of all food in the US is wasted across the supply chain. And in Alameda County, it's estimated that businesses discard 72 to 115 million tons of edible food a year. So that is grocery stores, restaurants, healthcare facilities, any institution that has food waste. And then on top of that, households also waste up to 63 million tons of additional food waste. And this has a huge impact on the county. So we do have a lot of citywide compost in Alameda County, but even so, about 75% of food waste ends up in local landfills versus ending up in the compost or recycled in other ways. And this generates about 38,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, or the equivalent of 7,000 passenger cars on the road each year. And then finally, it also consumes 5 billion gallons of water that ultimately gets wasted when the food ends up in the landfill or compost. For reference, that's about 9% of total household water use in the county. And then on top of that, there's some impacts that are harder to quantify, such as the transportation costs and emissions to transport that food across the state or farther from out of state across the supply chain, and the economic losses for farmers and other individuals in the food system. So before diving into what some of the solutions and implementation for food recovery looks like in Alameda County, I want to take a look at this EPA food recovery hierarchy, which I'm sure many of us have seen, but I want to highlight a couple of the tiers here. So as I just mentioned, about 75% of the food waste is going into the landfill in Alameda County. So even moving up to the orange tier, and implementing more countywide composting or increasing user buy-in would be a huge win. But today I want to highlight the top 2 tiers of our hierarchy here and talk about some more innovative solutions happening in the county. So first, we'll take a look at some food recovery solutions happening where organizations are rescuing edible food and ensuring that it goes to food insecure individuals. And also going one rung higher to look at solutions that are going directly to the source and ensuring that less excess food is being generated in the first place. So with that in mind, I'm going to switch gears and talk about some of the solutions in Alameda County. So first, I want to take a look at the individual and household solutions being implemented. So diving a little bit into a survey that was done with 400 households in Alameda County, they had a lot of interesting findings that I want to just summarize briefly here before diving into the solutions. So they found that for households, actually 75% of those surveyed were using the green bin or compost to dispose of their food waste. So much of the food waste happening in Alameda County in the landfill comes from businesses, not the household level. But they did find that there was a lack of education around food waste prevention strategies and around date labels at the household level. And the majority of food was being thrown out either because it was spoiled or because individuals didn't understand the date labels on the food. So they might confuse a sell-by date or a best-by date for that food not being edible or safe to eat anymore. The survey also found that there was a lot of positive buy-in and support of individuals implementing some food waste prevention strategies. So there were 6 that the majority of individuals were open and interested to try. So I'll just summarize those here. Folks were open to storing food in a way that best extended their shelf life. They were also open to making a shopping list with specific meals in mind, eating food sort of first in, first out in the order that it was in their pantry before eating new items, freezing food and leftovers before they were to spoil, repurposing leftovers into new meals, and buying less food at a time with each visit to the grocery store. So thinking about how to actually implement those strategies on a wide scale and educate households, I want to highlight Stop Waste, which is our waste management authority in Alameda County. That also has some amazing ad campaigns and educational tools for individuals. So on the screen there, you'll see one of the recent ad campaigns that highlights a way to make a smoothie out of some less beautiful produce in your fridge. And they have other examples for other food items out right now. And then I also want to highlight 2 of their educational tools as well. So these are available on one of their websites called stopfoodwaste.org. And on the left, they have a fridge reality check tool, which invites individuals to take 10 minutes, go into their fridge, and find any food that is spoiled, and then really dig in and say, like, what types of food am I wasting the most? And take a look at how much of the food is left and really understand how they're wasting food. So that's an awesome resource for anyone if you can take 10 minutes to do that. And then there's also a tool on the right that has some information on the best way to store food for its best shelf life. So those are just 2 of those resources, but you're welcome to take a look at the website. They have a lot of awesome stuff there. And I really think it's engaging for individuals and visually pleasing, which I think is great to get buy-in. And then switching gears, I want to talk about some grassroots solutions that are being implemented in Alameda County, specifically in Berkeley. So taking a look at Berkeley Food Network, which is an anti-hunger organization. They also do a lot of work with food recovery and have a large food recovery program. So in their food hub in Berkeley, they source from a variety of places such as the county food bank, local farms, but over half of the food that comes into the warehouse comes from food recovery. So that could be from local grocery stores, restaurants, local wholesalers or producers. There's a lot of food businesses in the Bay Area. And what's unique about Berkeley Food Network in comparison to other food recovery organizations in the county or nationwide is they're able to rescue a variety of types of product, such as produce, which is often the easiest whole produce to recover, but they can also take prepared food in bulk from a restaurant or from a dining hall. So like a large hotel pan of rice or a large hotel pan of pasta or something like that, and bulk dry goods that wouldn't be able to be distributed directly to clients. And they're able to utilize this in their Hub Kitchen program. So this is a photo from that program. And just a short overview on this. The program operates 3 days a week and takes about 2,000 pounds of food each week and turns it into 1,000 ready-to-eat meals that are made from almost 100% recovered food outside of some spices and oil and things like that. And then these meals are ready to eat and easy to distribute to food insecure individuals in the community and are able to recover some of that harder to distribute food items. These meals are great for seniors who might not want to cook a full meal every night but want a single serve portion, and also for unhoused individuals or folks who don't have access to a full kitchen. And they are packaged in compostable trays. So they are fairly easy to dispose of in Berkeley, where we have citywide compost. And then I want to also highlight one other food recovery portion at Berkeley Food Network, which is with grocery stores and wholesalers, working with organizations like the Oakland Produce Market, the San Francisco Produce Market, and local grocery stores like Berkeley Bowl. Berkeley Food Network will recover food from them weekly or more often, and also are able to implement some food waste prevention strategies by closely tracking all of the food they recover on a regular basis and sharing that information back with the business each month. So a lot of businesses who often didn't have a clear picture of their food waste are able to easily have that overview and actually implement some prevention strategies in adjusting their buying or improving their waste sorting practices. So they're able to do that.
Grace, you have about a little over a minute left.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. And then I'll finally just zoom out to the systems level solution. In California, we're deep in the implementation of Senate Bill 1383. And I just want to highlight the mandate that includes recovering 20% of edible food. So that actually has had a great impact on businesses buying into edible food recovery. And with the backing of environmental health and waste management, there's a lot more proactive outreach from businesses who are actually reaching out to organizations like Berkeley Food Network and other food recovery orgs to help them recover food, rather than before SB 1383, there was a lot of proactive outreach on the behalf of nonprofits and organizations. And then I just want to highlight a couple areas, room for growth in the Senate bill. First, having some more state level funding, as it's an unfunded mandate that puts more work on the jurisdictions and makes it more challenging to implement and ultimately reach compliance. And then the fact that Senate Bill 1383 targets organic waste in the landfill. There is also food waste, of course, happening outside of the landfill. And a huge part of that is food waste on farms, which specifically is about 15% of all food waste happens on the farm level and isn't captured in a lot of the statistics we hear on food waste. So there's a lot of room for growth in that realm as well. And in closing, I just want to highlight that there are a lot of innovative solutions happening right now, and that food waste is a solvable problem that just requires collaboration and creative thinking across the supply chain. So with that, this is my contact information if anyone wants to reach out, and then I'll pass it over to Chris and to our final presenter.
Great. Thank you, Grace, and thank you for your work with Berkeley Food Network. I remember when they came through the commission, when they were launching, and they said they just really needed a hub, and they got the city involved. And it seems like they've done a great job, 2 million pounds of food. So, all right, Maggie. Yeah, thank you. Maggie, Rose is going to run your slides for you. So I'm going to set the timer.
Good. Well, I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me. I've been researching increasing participation in zero waste for about 30 years, starting with a doctoral dissertation next. You can read the abstract on your own. Next. I don't have much time to do this. So, purpose of maximizing program participation, there's really two main purposes. One is if we want to reach zero waste, we have to be participating close to 100%. In New York City, we don't measure participation, but the capture rate has been stationary at about 50%. So that's 50% of whatever we target. So as a result, we have something like an 18% diversion rate. And it's been stationary for a long time. No concerted effort to increase participation towards 100. The other main purpose is maximizing participation to fill up the collection trucks, and that decreases costs, and that allows us to proceed without brickbats being thrown to say it costs $700 a ton because you haven't filled up your trucks. Next. So how do we do this? So first we have to establish a collection program design that's convenient. Curbside is convenient, universally available, everybody, and frequent. And furthermore, mandate the program, not make it voluntary, motivate participation. So that would be fines for noncompliance and a good enforcement program. Pay-as-you-throw incentive would be good. Then understand your population's readiness to participate, and I'll talk about that more later. Structure motivational and educational approaches for all personality types and demographics. Ensure there's enough funding to implement these approaches to reach everyone, often every year. I'll touch on these again. Okay, next. So there are 7 steps to changing behavior. It starts at awareness of the program to permanently changed behavior. The educational programs need to address all the steps in order to be successful. Collection programs and educational materials should be designed to succeed in getting everybody to understand, be motivated, and continue to participate. If any of the steps is not optimized, then the participation rate suffers. New York City's programs have focused on the first 2 steps with occasional brochures, some social media, a website, and infrequent TV or subway campaigns. Next. So I used this during the doctoral dissertation phase. You can see some of the steps on the left to behavior change, starting with awareness, then comprehension. They have to understand what the purpose and how to do the program. The attitude towards participating, intention of participating, those are different, as well as the actual participation and then maintaining it. And you can see on the right, the first 2 can be done with an information program, but then you've got these other things that you have to address, like a person's beliefs, their evaluations, the social norms, the ability to participate, the opportunity to participate. Those are 2 different things. And experiences with the behavior. You know, if it was a bad experience, they may not participate longer. Okay, next. So I've condensed that into this, which is perhaps easier to read. And you can see, so New York City focuses mainly on the first 2, but that means that you only get some of the people. Those who need more motivation, need to have an attitude shift, need to, intend to participate. Those are left out. Convenience is curbside, as I've mentioned. Let's keep going. Next. All right, so maximizing convenience. That is a really important one. And in New York, we haven't always done that. In order to maximize participation and fill the trucks, you have to have this. And just as a historical note, in 1993, we started curbside recycling in the city. And just a few years ago, the city has started dabbling in curbside for organics. But because of the educational program, which was suboptimal, the trucks were largely empty. And the cost per ton, over $500, sometimes over $700 a ton. And the people who didn't like recycling could use that against us. We must fill the trucks. So, and there needs to be, when there's weekly participation, the convenience factor becomes even more important. The next section describes how convenience is a key strategy. Let's keep going. Okay, so here are the personality types that I mentioned before. Readiness to participate. You can divide the whole population into these. The eager beavers, it's like you say jump, they say how high, how fast can we do this? But it's a small percentage of the population. You know, a simple brochure will get them. Then there's the convenience factor. It must be convenient and not cost anything. And if you have a program that does that, then you've got those people. The next group kind of need to have their friends, family, and neighbors participating, or at least not laughing at them. So that needs special attention, which I'll talk about in a minute. Incentives. These are the people that require incentives like money, freebies, discounts. Then there's the final hostile group that need to have disincentives, fines, jail, job loss. In our area, it's most likely to be fines. Next. So here's a case study. In New York City, over the last year or so, the Department of Health has done outreach to get people to take vaccines. And they spent over $243 million on vaccine ads and outreach. Meanwhile, I had opportunity to ask the sanitation commissioner a few weeks ago how much we spend on recycling and organics outreach. She said a few million. So there you have it. The DOH targeted the campaign to all the personality types I just went through. So they had the basic information using traditional media and the website, and that's all that the eager beavers needed. The second group, they had many conveniently located vaccination locations in most neighborhoods and the subway even. And that's the second group. Third group, they started to roll out targeted peer group TV ads. So there was one with a pregnant woman, which would address that cohort, a young black male, another one, a Jamaican guy. There were others. Then the fourth group, they gave out $100 bills to people to take the vaccination and Metro cards. And the final one, if you wanted to work in the public sector, you had to have a vaccination to keep your job. So they hit all 5 of these. The results, every $1 invested saved over 10 in infection, mortality rates, and productivity losses. Next. So examples of educational approaches for a model program. It must be multiple, sustained, consistent approaches. Multiple means not just one-size-fits-all brochure, which is what a lot of jurisdictions rely on. Some people will read that brochure, but others won't, and you need to give them TV, radio, subway, bus, billboards, social, and other ways. The need to penetrate all the neighborhoods, all the demographics, and apply frequently. Take a look at the Geico ads and the Liberty Mutual. They target their ads and they're incessant. I'm sure most of you have seen those. Sustained, what is that? Outreach, not just once or twice a year. One brochure a year is not going to cut it with most people. There should be something happening all the time. And consistent. Don't keep changing the program. Removing recycling or organics pickups causes a long-term damage to participation rates. That's happened in New York City a couple of times. Causes bad feelings. Next. And you need to fund the outreach to maximize participation. Austin, Texas upped its participation rate to 85 to 95% by increasing outreach funding to $5 per capita per year. Seattle and San Francisco spend over $3 per capita per year, and they have high diversion rates. New York City spends 86 cents per capita per year, has a low diversion rate. Every jurisdiction should calculate dollars per capita per year spent on outreach and see how you measure up to these benchmarks. Don't cancel parts of the program because it won't save money in the long term. As you can see in New York, we have suffered with the same low diversion ever since Bloomberg did that.
Maggie, you have 2 minutes left.
2 minutes, okay. Very good. Next, All right, remove and don't set up barriers. And I was getting this, Mayor Bloomberg announced cancellation, but all but paper and cardboard. He canceled hard plastic, he canceled glass, reduced collections to every other week for 1 year. People remembered the wrong message. Some didn't keep up with the changes, caused ill will, angered the supers. And, it's messed up diversion rate permanently, it seems. They also more recently set up this opt-in program for food scrap collection, required everybody to get landlord approval on a form, required the neighborhood as a whole to want the program, and then limited the program to 7 of 59 districts. That got the eager beavers angry, and a lot of other people just couldn't be bothered. Next. So this is what happened when they removed the barrier, the opt-in barrier in Queens just recently. They went to curbside universal all over Queens, and the orange bars are Queens districts, and the gray ones are the opt-in districts. You can see the improvement. Next. Next. I'm going to pass this one. So here's a recommendation. Frequently measure the understanding, the awareness, the attitude. Measure your people. See whether your outreach is working. Cross-tab the results to understand the impact of demographics and geography on the answers. Tweak and optimize the programs and education based on the results. Measure participation rates monthly and correlate with program and education changes in expenditures. Next. As I mentioned, I've been doing research for a while. This one was from 2004, I think. And here's a question. Main single reason for not recycling all recyclable items every time. So we asked that of a couple thousand people in New York. And I gave them a bunch of plausible reasons for not recycling everything. And the two that were the most was, I forget to recycle at 41%, and I'm confused about what to recycle, 21%. Clearly, that's a failure in the, the education and outreach. Next. And another recommendation, keep tabs on participation rates and on what your funding is for and how well it's working. How are the education and outreach funds spent? Which programs? What's the size of the campaign? Is it sufficient? Demographic and geographic diversity of the ads, are they sufficient? Which educational programs are most effective? How much is spent on each program annually? How much is spent annually per capita, as I mentioned? Track the capture rates relative to participation. And finally, track participation rates over time to gauge achievement of the long-term zero waste goals and see how well your bang for buck is going. Next, I think that's it.
That's it. Maggie, thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up. And I did put contacts for everyone in the chat. I would copy and paste the chat yourself so you can keep all this great information. And it's time to close this plenary. Thank you, speakers, for your participation and your years of expertise and your hard work in this field. So if everyone can check the chat, you'll know where to go next for the concurrence. So more good stuff to come today. Thank you very much.